Hey, I'm Chris, and this is Fully Defined, where I help designers and engineers get the most out of SolidWorks. In this video, we're diving into one of the most powerful and misunderstood tools in SolidWorks, Loft. Whether you're creating smooth transitions or tackling more organic forms, Loft gives you incredible control over shape and surface quality. I've been using SolidWorks professionally for over a decade, teaching at uni, designing real-world products, and developing trainings for students just like you. In this series, I'm sharing practical insights that'll help you go beyond just the basics. In part 3, we'll look at how to use Loft with simple and complex profiles, when to use guide curves, and how to get clean, predictable results. Let's jump into it. These lessons you're about to see are taken from my full SolidWorks for Designers course on Udemy, where I go deeper into the tools and provide project files to follow along. If you want to learn faster with additional content, practice files, and support, check out the full Udemy course linked below. All right, let's learn now about lofted boss bases. So it's this grayed out option here in the top of the screen. Lofted boss base adds material between two or more profiles to create a solid feature. The first, last, or first and last profiles can be points. Lofts are probably the most complex out of these four features, these four boss base features. Boundary boss base, one of those tools I've rarely used. So, and that's not part of the CSWA exam, so we'll pass over that one. But with a loft, because you can use so many different types of geometry to create shapes, yeah, it can be quite complex, but also it can allow you to achieve a lot of forms that you can't normally with the other tools. We're going to do something similar with our little task and how we're going to learn it. Now, to kick off our loft, we're actually going to start by doing another little sketch. Sketch task. So I want you to follow along and sketch this shape. I'm going to start from the origin. We're going to go out to one side, go down, in, down, out at a bit of an angle. Now, if you can manage to do this trick, I'll be impressed. So what I want you to do is move your cursor out and back into that point, and then drag it around. But no, we don't want tangent. Actually want an arc like this. Even better, if you're able to get that arc to get a center point that is in line with the origin. Not exactly like that. We'll fix that in a second. And then a line straight back up to the origin, closing it off. Now, what's happened here is the center point of this arc here has a relation which is in line with this line here. We don't want that. So I'm going to delete that relation, and I'm going to make this center line vertical. And I'm going to move the center point so it is on that center line. And then we're going to add a couple of dimensions. Now, you may see me using what's called mouse gestures from time to time. Actually, I use them nearly all the time. I will have an episode in the bonus section about mouse gestures. They help you become much more efficient with your selection tools. I primarily use them for sketching, which means when I'm here and I need to get the dimension tool, instead of moving my cursor from the right up to smart dimension here and clicking, what I do is I right click with my mouse, drag up. You can see the other tools here I've got as options. Drag up, and then I've got the dimension tool activated. And now I'm going to add in my dimensions. So please follow along. Top will be 10, this side will be 5. From this line to this line will be 5. And the height of this section will also be 5. The angle of this line will be 45. The height for this line will be 3. The dimension of the arc will be 12. And now we have a fully defined sketch. And I want you to hit Features, Revolve. And I'm going to select this middle line for our revolve. And this is going to start off our shape. And then you can save this shape as P01. All right, with that done, we're going to create some sketch profiles for our loft. We're going to have 3 profiles for our loft. One of those profiles is going to be this edge that's created by the geometry, and it's a circle. The next 2 profiles, we're going to create 2 planes, one above here and one a little bit higher, and we're going to sketch ellipses on those planes. So it's a good thing we've already used and learned about those tools. If you skipped over those, please go back to those episodes and watch them so you understand what I'm about to show you. First up, we're going to create a plane 2 millimeters above this face. So I'm going to select the face, then go to reference geometry, plane, and put it at a dimension of 2. Make sure the arrow is pointing up so that it's going up above that face. Press OK. And then while that plane is still selected, you can see it's selected because I've got the 4 points outside of it and it looks green or blue. Sorry, if I click off, it's green. Click on again, blue. I'm going to select plane and do another plane. This one's going to be 15 millimeters up. All right, now, ellipse sketch time. We're going to start by selecting plane 1, pressing sketch, and go normal 2. Now we're going to draw an ellipse. We're going to start it in the center point, drag out to the side, and drag up. So roughly this shape. And then we want to fully define our sketch. So we're going to add a dimension from the outer points of the ellipse. That's going to be 18. And then the inner points is going to be 12. Now it's still blue. So how can we control that? Well, here's the tip to work out what you need to do to fully define the sketch. Click and drag around with your mouse and see what happens. In this case, it can rotate. So we want to stop that by making those 2 points horizontal. And now the sketch is fully defined. Now, I want to do the same sketch profile on plane 2, but I want to rotate the orientation. There is a few ways of doing that. The easiest way is to just draw an ellipse like this and go through the same steps and dimension it again. But can anybody think of what is the issue with this workflow, with this process? The answer is, if I change sketch here, sketch number 2, and it becomes 30 by 12, well, all of a sudden, they're different sizes. So if this is where it comes back to design intent. In this case, our design intent is to have the same profile in both sketches, but rotated 90 degrees. So we don't want to set up our sketch on sketch number 3 on plane number 2 with this kind of dimensions. Can you think of another way you could achieve the same process? It's here. What you need to do is in sketch number 2, I'm going to create 2 construction lines. I'm going to select those lines and make them for construction. And then sketch 3, I'm going to draw another 2 construction lines, make them for construction. But here's the trick. I'm going to select this horizontal one and this vertical one. So I've selected lines from 2 different sketches. I'm going to make them equal and do the same for the long lines. Now, accept the sketch and change the dimension in sketch number 2. And you can see they're changing together. And that's how we manage the design intent of this small feature and make it more efficient as we start to move through our design. Okay, enough about sketch tricks. Let's hide those planes. Don't need them anymore. And we now have 3 profiles set up to do our loft. So to do the loft, we'll select that feature, and in the main box here, the top one, that's where I select our profiles. Now, when you're selecting profiles, the order that you select them in matters when you have more than 2. SolidWorks will remember the order. And that's what these little arrows are here for. So if you make a selection that's in the wrong order, you can select it in the box here and move it up or down. Now, what I'd like you to select is this edge, this sketch, and then this sketch. And you'll probably notice a few things. First, we get a preview. Okay, the yellow preview is showing us the shape that it's going to create with that loft. Let's just have a look around by rotating our mouse and, get a preview with a bit of lighting, but it's a bit hard to see, is it really symmetrical or not? It's hard to tell. What you can do is go down here to curvature display and turn on mesh preview. And that's going to add some mesh lines to help you understand what's going on with the surfaces. And you can increase that mesh density to give you more data to visualize, more lines. Now, what we're finding is that our loft is kind of twisting. And it's twisting because of the location that we selected those profiles. It is controlled by these green dots called connectors. Now, what we want to do if we want to achieve a nice symmetrical result is move all of those connectors to either a vertical or horizontal line so they're straight. Let's try moving them to the bottom here. So just click and drag, and I'm moving it to the bottom. Now, there is a more exact way of controlling this, which is with guide curves. Well, we might look at that in a few minutes. Right now, I'm just moving all of those into a line. Now you can see they're not perfect. They're pretty close. And now our result, it's much more balanced right and left sides. Okay, let's just accept that. So we can have a look at what it looks. We can have a turn around our space to see how that looks and appears. Now, depending on your SolidWorks settings, whether you've got real view graphics turned on or material as your default, you might get different appearances. I like to work with none of these appearance tools on, so that I'm just getting the same generic view while I'm working with my geometry. I will change those settings later, but if I need to visualize anything like surfaces, I'm often exporting to Keyshot and doing some proper visualization work. Yeah. So that's our loft. Now it's not finished. We want to refine it. So let's go back in and edit that feature. And let's have a look through some of those other boxes under the loft properties. So you see our profiles here. Now what I was talking about earlier with the order. Okay, the one at the top, that is your first profile. The one at the bottom is your last. Now when you click on them, it's going to highlight what order they're in. If you need to change the order, you can press the button here. It's going to move them up or down, but you can see if I move my bottom sketch to the middle of the profiles, then it's no longer working. So sometimes if you make the wrong selections, you're not going to be able to see it all, anything in your preview. So always try and simplify from that point of view. Now, when I come back in to this mode, I can't see those control points anymore, those green dots that we saw before. If I want to see them, I can right click and I can go here to show all connectors. And then it's going to show me those green points and I can move them around once again. Start and end constraints. This is a very useful section of this tool. Your start constraint is for your starting profile and your end constraint is for your end profile. This controls how the loft appears at its start and end points. And constraint means it controls the shape. So the usual options you'll expect are none, default, which almost like none, normal to profile, tangency, and curvature to face. Now, tangency and curvature to face can look very similar, but the difference between them is very subtle, and for very experienced surfacing users, for this level of SolidWorks use, tangency to face, it's perfectly fine. I'll just explain the difference between normal to profile and tangency because they're the main two that you would use. So tangency to face is going to make the surface of this loft tangent to the face that is highlighted, all right? And so you can see how the shape has changed from being a very sharp join, okay, where it's just purely guided by the profiles that we've selected, to, in this case, going to something that has a nice curve to it to be tangent to that face. Now, if I change that to curvature to face, you can see that it's, again, a very slight difference, but a dramatic difference to the shape of the loft. Let's go back to tangency to face. And then the number relates to how strong that setting is. So the default is 1, but you can change that. And I'll show you how that affects the shape. So if I go from 1 and if I go less, well, it's going to have less tangency. It's going to get smaller and smaller. If I go up, it'll go up in 0.1 increments. Once I get to 2, then it's going to jump 3, 4, 5. And if we keep going, we'll break the preview eventually. It doesn't want to go up any more than 10. But we can see the loft that's creating. It's creating this very extreme shape. If I press OK, it works to create a solid body, but hey, that's I wouldn't really advise working like this. So let's bring that tangency back down to 1, and let's look at the end constraint, because the shape that we want here, we actually want it to come up at a straight sort of end as well. And how to do that at an end constraint where there's no face to get tangent to is actually to use normal to profile. So I'm going to select normal to profile, and that means as that curve comes up, it's going to be at a 90-degree angle to that profile there. It's exactly what we want. Okay. Now, the one thing to note when you're using these start and end constraints, it can make it more difficult to select these control handles, particularly from like a top top view. All right, you see here it's a bit more challenging. So just be aware of that. Try and get your shape sorted before playing with the constraints. I think so. So in line, that seems pretty good. All right. And then the last example here to really look at, I'm not going to go through Loft in 100% detail because there are a lot of different ways it can be used. But guide curves here. So a guide curve will help control the outer shape of the loft. Now in this example, my shape is controlled by the sketch profile. So sketch at the top and the middle, the circular element of this section at the bottom, and then the start and end constraints. But if I wanted even more control or to really drastically change the shape, I can do another sketch. And that sketch would have to pass through a point at the top and the bottom and the middle profile. And then I could control the curve on the side of the product, okay, the side of the object. Where you might want to use a guide curve is if you've got a certain profile that goes through your product, you know, from bottom to top, front to back. But in, let's say there's a particular section where it sort of just cuts in a little bit, or it's got a slight different detail in that area. We can just do a localized guide curve that's on that side. Everything else can remain as is. All right, and that's one way that you can use that feature. But it's a more advanced tool, and we're not going to cover that in detail in this class. All right, let's finish off this part while we're here. We're just going to learn one other tool. That is the dome tool. And it's very quick. You can find the dome under Insert Features, Dome. And how it works is you select a face. If it create a dome on that face, it will. Now this is a very small dome, only 0.5 millimeters. So the distance is the section in the middle, and that touches the edges. But here we actually want to create a dome that is 9 millimeters. You can see it creates a bit of an egg shape. But once we hit this button for elliptical dome, it's going to make that nice and smooth. And the reason it looks like that is because 9 millimeters is half the distance from the size of this ellipse. Remember, the ellipse is 18 across. So we've got a nice semicircle going across that top face. And if we right click on these faces and we select tangency, we can see that all those blue faces there are tangent, which means they have smooth joins from face to face. Now I'd like to show a lofted cut as well, although it's not one that I really expect you to see in the CSWA exam. Lofted cut works in a very similar fashion. You have profiles, you join up those profiles in the feature, and it's going to cut the material out. Let's look at an example here. I'm going to go and create a plane that is 15 millimeters away from the front on this side, from the right plane, and another one on this opposite direction. And on plane 3, I'm going to sketch a circle, which is going to be 10. So you can see that circle there. And on plane 4, I'm going to do a sketch which is a center rectangle, which is going to be 15 by 15. Now I'm going to hide those planes, and we're going to click Lofted Cut. And you can see all the settings are almost identical to a loft. I'm going to click on this corner of this rectangle and then this face of the circle. And you can see the shape, the preview. It's going from a flat edge to a curve. And when I press OK, it's cutting away that material from my solid body. And that is a lofted cut. Nice work making it through using the Loft tool. Not the easiest feature to get your head around. But once you do, it opens the door to some really advanced shapes and designs. Let me know how you go using Loft in your own projects. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want some more structured lessons, check out the full course on Udemy. All the details are below. See you in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. If you've got any suggestions for other content, leave it in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And there's some other videos here. Check out. Thanks.